We are moving to another section of discipline, and we are going to deal with focus. Yeah, most of us have heard about the idea of being focused, follow one course until success, and all that. So today, that becomes the central idea around our discussion. I don't know who amongst you has a book other than Odhiambola Ale, who is. Oh, it's quite some read. I will take you through, and then you grasp what you grasp and be ready to share with us your understanding. Yeah, that is what makes Power Monday. We share. Disciplined focus. Uh, Immediately, my dad learned that he was not going to afford my school fees. After having squandered the proceeds from the loan he had secured from a teachers' cooperative society, he sent me to Mombasa. I would go live with his younger brother who was working in one of the many tourist hotels in that town and thus was allegedly better off financially. The brother had indicated to me that I can go live with him as I pursue my secondary school education, and he would pay. He actually paid for my examination enrollment fee for Standard 8, not because he came at the time of enrollment, but because my dad had not paid yet while we were approaching exams. The head teacher had just paid mine and was waiting to be refunded. It was in the month of March when I traveled by train to Mombasa, hoping for good things and was counting myself lucky to have such a considerate uncle. Besides, I had never been to any town. It would be a great exposure because I had done some casual jobs, helping in the farms. I had some little money, which I used to buy a tiny used rucksack from one of my relatives to carry my scanty clothes and a pair of blue slippers for my shoes. I still had some coins for change. My dad gave me the exact fare for train from Kisumu to Mombasa. It would take 2 days on the road, traveling at night with a full day stop in Nairobi. It soon became apparent that there was no money to spare for my school fees. My uncle had lots of commitments, including planning for his wife's dowry, building himself a house up country, and another for his mother. Again, he said my dad ought to take that responsibility because he did not pay for his, that is my uncle's, school fees, despite the fact that he was already employed. All we could do with his wife was to go early in the morning to Kongowea market to sell the pieces of clothes for kids, which the wife used to make in the house. At around noon, we would come back to the house, prepare lunch, do the laundry, dishes, then I would get time to go watch videos in the neighborhoods. Of course, I did not have money for videos, and that meant I could only watch the introduction parts, which were always free and mostly music rather than action. My aunt here was frequently sick, and more often than not, I would be the one to do all the work alone from early dawn. After about 2 months without any communication from my dad, I felt my energy waning. Many friends kept giving me advice. Get a kibarua, that is casual work, at a building site and start earning money. Soon you will have your own house and live your life. Others would say, ask him to take you for a course. What that meant is, besides having passed pretty well in school and qualifying for secondary school, I should ask for a chance to be taken for some technical training like tailoring, carpentry, etc. I chose instead to go back home and discuss with my dad once more. how I can go back to school and pursue my dream. Living in Mombasa was not going to help me in any way. When I arrived home, I looked stupid. I was a total failure in the court of public opinion. I had let myself down. No one would understand why on earth someone who has had an opportunity to live in a major town like Mombasa would choose to go back in the name of looking for school. Why couldn't I take a course? How could I fail to think clearly and see that this was an opportunity of a lifetime to establish myself and live? It was at this time that I learned a great lesson in life. People reason differently. And if you are not firm in your dream, you're going to live someone else's dream. You must stay focused, stubborn, and steadfast. It does not matter who is giving you advice. You do not have to do anything someone else wants you to do. Do your things the way you judge right and stay focused. At least in this way, you would not have to blame anyone, even if you do not entirely get everything as you anticipated. And you do not have to regret anything. I stood by my goals and dreams. No one else understood me, and no one else wanted to. The other beauty is that I did not share much with anyone. Now I see the advantage of that. Knowing what you want and keeping it to yourself, as Donald Trump put it in one of his books, Trump, How to Get Rich. Powered by my inner belief that education is the key to the life I wanted to live, despite all the challenges, I was determined to find a way to go to school and finally attain a university education. Not that I had seen anyone around ever did it. So when I came from Mombasa, since my uncle was unable to take me to school as he had earlier suggested, and finding my dad too ill to be disturbed, I did not have a choice but to stay at home, figuring out my next move. Just around that time, since I vastly had to keep fending for myself and trying to keep up with the lifestyle I acquired in Mombasa, that of having neat clothes, shoes, toothbrush, and toothpaste, shoe polish, petroleum jelly, among others, I had to be doing something. At this point, my thinking had expanded a bit, and it was clear to me that there must be better ways to make a more reasonable living than just working for people in the farms. Then it happened. News got to me that some Germans were providing scholarship for motor vehicle driving and mechanics. This was happening at a polytechnic located in a town 24 kilometers away from home. One had to present himself or herself with the necessary academic papers for interview. I prepared myself and got my class 8 result slips and a school leaving certificate. To say the truth, the opportunity excited me because to me then, it would be great to be a mechanic since that would guarantee a source of income. And I would own a garage and become rich. So I established an appropriate day and set out very early in the morning, trekking to Oyugis, the said town. By around 10:30, I had reached and got into the queue. It was my first ever interview, I believe. After a warm and brief discussion with a certain white lady there, I was awarded a scholarship. They would pay everything and I would live within the polytechnic premises, except that I had to raise a portion of the entry fee as a commitment. It was only about 4,000 Kenyan shillings, which was approximately 66.52 USD at that time. I could not raise this amount of money. In fact, if I could, that alone would afford me school fees for one school term. If you come to look at it, I was getting defocused and would have lost it. I only realized a few years later that even most of the mechanics were really not doing as well as I thought. Stay focused to your courses. I did not realize that motor vehicle mechanics is not equal to engineering that I had aspired to do. But thanks to God, for I was not able to pick that option. Even after this, still, people kept distracting me with countless issues. Others kept asking why I could not just accept the reality and forget about the schooling. And when later, life at home became much worse after my grandmother also died, when I was struggling to keep alive, others still advised me to go away from home and live with my maternal uncle, where my other brother was. But I knew that leaving my hometown would be the recipe for terminating my schooling completely. I gave no comment, accepting or objecting, always trying to appear respectful and obedient. It helps, I think. You must be disciplined in your focus. You must not have a wavering focus that is subject to the wind. That is the relatives, the friends, the likes who would always want to have a say. Focus is a very critical attribute, and many others have labored to explain what it means. This problem makes people jump from this trade to that without learning anything and becoming their best, and thus a lot of people sabotaging their own success for the mere lack of focus. In your journey to the top, you are going to meet countless distraction agents. That is the way life is. If your focus is weak, you can be sure of remaining average at best. Many good opportunities will come along your way and would seduce you away from what you originally set out to do, which is bigger and most important. To me, I had not a few. The Polytechnic scholarship, the Mombasa Life, fishing was there, and many people were living on the same. My business was another that could have put me off school line. Because I later started a business that thrived too. But my disciplined focus to the ultimate goal, I would say, rescued me. I pray you maintain your radar in perspective. That is it for today about disciplined focus. So, good people, share what you got. Yes, disciplined focus. The idea is there are distractions. I know each and every one of us may have a story. Maybe you started a business, or you wanted to start a particular business and then went to another, maybe this, maybe that. To me, my biggest trouble was staying true to my idea of finishing school, despite having difficulties with raising fees. But I got different opportunities that tried to dissuade me. You see, I got that opportunity to live in Mombasa, and it was an enticing life. Yeah, many people were there, and thinking about going back to the village was quite unthinkable. I got to start businesses. I did my business, which was quite good, doing well in our small town later. That almost made me forget about schooling. I was out of school for over a year, yeah, about 13 months straight, reading nothing except newspaper, but hawking things, yeah, sweets, boiled eggs, gum, and things like that. I went fishing for a couple of weeks, hoping to raise school fees. And many people told me there is no way you can go back to school after being here. Yeah, Just stay here. Let's do it. We live by it. I got that opportunity to do mechanical motor vehicle mechanics, which then looked quite lucrative. You know, I thought mechanics are sort of engineers. I later learned that they are far from that. Everyone could become a mechanic. So all these things came in, but by the end of the day, there was that inspiration inside me that education is the key. I had to pursue it. I had to reach the university. And it's not because I had seen people who are in the university or who are coming from the university and inspiring me. It's just that I believed that I had the brains and they did not deserve to be wasted. And that kept me going. And ultimately, by the grace of God, I found a way to go back to school for 9 months to reclaim all that I had lost.
Well, that's a journey, really. And I think from my experience is I've also had some almost similar, okay, not going out of school really, but similar, where people try and give you ideas. You can be this, you try this, you can do. There's a time I was doing French, then there's a time I was to be a secretary, there's a time I was a salesperson, and all that. Sometimes there's a time I was, I think, is it a caregiver or something? So all those things, they distract you. People are trying to, in their mind, they're trying to help you, but ideally, they're really taking you off your course until you discover, oh my God, I'm supposed to be this. Then I discovered I'm better. I'm a salesperson. I'm good with people. Those are the kind of attributes that I have, and all that. So, as you say, focus and discipline, they go hand in hand. In my business, which is insurance, if you lose focus, you are just doomed, because 5 minutes of diverting to sell. In fact, there was a day I was selling mutumba in Gikomba. So 10 minutes of diverting to sell mutumba, you lose focus on the like my example and the insurance. So I think you are right. I think people need to just to stay focused. And I also like the idea you are saying that you keep your ideas to yourself. Sometimes we have so many people who are dream breakers, people who just, yeah, Wezekani, you can't, you see. And then it derails you, it gives you become hope, you lose hope. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Liz. This is very typical of Kenyans. And when we talk of focus, it's a big thing, by the way. You realize that right now we are in June, June is ending. There are enough people who started some business in January, but they are doing maybe a second or a third business right now. By the end of the day, there is not much that you've gathered. You are always starting afresh. And what happens is you lose the experience that you started to gather in the other one. So we need to stay firm. And that's why I call it being stubborn. Stubborn means some other people will try to get you into their dream. If you are not stuck, if you are not focused into this, you may end up living somebody else's life and you will have to regret it. So that is quite important. And enough of us cannot run multiple businesses at the same time unless they are very much related, like mine are very much related. Thank you very much. Yes, Wahwea.
Yes, good morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to make some input. When I heard you saying that you wanted to do motor vehicle mechanics, but later you realized that it was far from being an engineer. Actually, that is a technical vocational education. And I would, speaking to yourself, sometimes it's good. If you had perhaps not kept that idea to yourself and shared with a professional person, then you would have been guided to know that actually starting from basic motor vehicle mechanics could have led you to to mechanical engineering. Because in the TVET qualification framework, we now have development structures where somebody can begin from that lowest level and end up even up to PhD as a mechanical engineer. And perhaps, who knows, you will be that one. So sometimes, yes, we needed to keep some ideas to ourselves, but sometimes we may not be full authorities of all the ideas that we have. So we needed to have some confidence in some individuals where we can confide some of our ideas, share, and be guided so that we get to see how we are opening our paths into the directions that we are moving. We need to identify people who we refer as our role models in particular areas of our interest, so that when you grow, you get to learn and get supported into growing your career path. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. You remind me what we discussed sometimes last year when we were reading the other book, How to Solve Problems. Yes, how to solve problems. Whom do I ask? That was the last question to self. So yes, some of us are advantaged enough. You can see people around you whom you can ask. Growing up in the village, it's not that I knew any mechanic or anybody I could ask. And so all the people I knew were either fishermen or working in the farm. And like I'm saying, it's not that I had ever seen somebody from a university. I'd never met a university student, by the way, in my life. And along the way, I realized that if you follow your heart, somewhat you get to where you should be. The concept here is if you follow somebody's heart, you may not necessarily, more so if your heart tells you that is not the direction I want to take, but then you do it just to please people, then you may end up being the one who feels out of place. And there are enough of us who have diverted from whatever God called them to be in order to please other people by doing what others felt was very appropriate. And that becomes a problem. And in any pursuit of a goal, if we listen to some people, we will be discouraged. And I remember reading in one of the books later in life that there are different levels of discouragement. The first one is you can never do it. You are not capable. You can't do it. And that is what Liz was sharing with us. You can't do it. This is not for people like you. Yeah. And by the way, if somebody told me I couldn't do it, maybe I would have bought that idea, because there was evidence all over. I've never seen anybody do it, and in the schools where I was, nobody ever went to any university and all sorts of things. But I was listening to my heart telling me what I need to do. And the people who guided me were pretty seniors. Some people telling you now you need to go and live with your maternal uncle. Maybe there you will have a place, because I was a vagabond. I did not have a place to live. I did not have a house to sleep. Somebody asked me, where do you live? And I realized that that question was very difficult, because then I realized that living had two key aspects: where you sleep and where you eat. But I would sleep anywhere and I would eat anywhere. So it's very difficult in such situations, but staying on course. So that's the first level. The second level is, well, seems you can do it, but it's really not important. Yeah, that is when you've proven that you're actually doing it. And the third level is, I knew it all along you could do it. Yeah, that is the people who are telling you, originally you can't do it, now telling you, I knew it all along that you could do it. So there are those levels of discouragement. I've met all of them. And for a number of years, many people still did not know that I even finished school. And when they heard that I passed exams going to university, they were wondering, but this boy was fishing here. Where did he go to school? We didn't see him going to school. So that's the way life is. If we are privileged to get some people to ask, some people to guide us, that is good. And by the way, by the end of the day, I was taught, ensure that your final decision is a subject of your own thought, your own conclusion. Let people advise you, but don't let them decide for you. Thank you. Yes, Susan.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
When you are reading the section of the focus, that is the time I was like, oh, I've been all along seeing it as determination. At one point, people describe it as being tough-headed. You are always being tough-headed. You don't hear guidance. But to me, I don't always, to the extent that when somebody talk of it as being tough-headed, I always find myself feeling like I need to react, because I'm like, I'm on my course. How dare you say that I'm tough-headed? But as you are reading, I saw that, oh, true, this focus discipline is determination, is that being tough-headed. You are on course, and all of us are unique in all our calls because everybody is called differently. We can all be engineers, but how you carry out your engineering work is different from the other. That is what distinct you from the other person. Meaning all of you are doing the same course, but how you perfect it has to be different. That is what is going to make you win over the others. And that is now the uniqueness of you. So in most cases, when people give you advice, not that actually they wanted you to fail, but they cannot see what you are, because what you are is unique to you. So what I always say, whatever they say around, you look into it. You only need to pick what is right and what is not, what can help you journey on your course, and what cannot help you leave. But in most instances, it becomes a little bit hard unless maybe you've grown to a different level of maturity. That is the time now you can know, out of what I shared, he had said this, I pick this, or I learn from this. This can always happen. This has always happened, because most of the instances people give you out of their personal experience. So you gather what is important out of their personal experiences as what does make you achieve your goal. You don't pick on it. And then finally, you will find yourself that you have achieved your goal. Because along the journey of being determined, there are things that you need to survive. For example, when you talk of, you start a company, you're starting from scratch. Along the way, it exhausts all the income that you have, but you still have to look for food. So on the process of looking for food, you can do something that is odd, that is not part of your focus. But being that you know very well that I'm doing this to make me have a food on the table, but it's not what I have, it will not move you away from your focus. You will just get that your daily bread for that day, but you still remain on course. And those are the times that you do something that is odd, but finally you come back. Then a person next to you will not understand you, because he will be like, he's not constant. He does this, he comes back this, he does this, not knowing you are doing that only to get a bread on your table, so that you don't become desperate, because when you are desperate, you automatically will drop your course. To avoid being that desperate, you will better do something just side by to keep you on track, to help you get on course, because finally there are certain basics that automatically, maybe I always say Nairobi is a land of stone. You must have food, you must have shelter. No other ways. Nowadays we call the third one, you must, in town you have to buy where to go release yourself. No, now it's becoming a little bit. So you have to know, how do I maintain my course? What do I do just as I do it? It's not the focus, but to help me have food on the table, so that meanwhile I keep my eye, how do I move to the next? Because unique things are not things that you achieve anyhow. for the people, for the story of the people, for the person who made the bulb, the light, it was not easy. It had to have 1,000 failures, but he knew there are not 1,000 failures. There are 1,000 ways of not doing it, but mainly he focused on it, despite doing other things, but the mind is on it. And having had that knowledge, I always sometimes consider whatever I might have done that was not my main focus, were just ways for me to sail so that I get a grip of life. Meanwhile, my eye is on what I do. And with that, however long it takes, you'll achieve it. And we've learned, maybe just from learning the history of people. I remember Peter Nyong'o at one point saying she practiced for 12 years to have achieved the win that she chose. She won. You hear of safari lorry drivers learning that after 8 years of trying is when they could know how to manage to drive on a mud. But we people who have not known how long they've traveled to see that, we only see the final part of it. We don't have the story of how he started. So I always say that with that knowledge, truly, you achieve your goal. Meaning you've known what is just a distraction, what is just to support, but finally the goal is achieved. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Susan. One is you've got to take full responsibility. You see, the beauty of listening to people and staying still on course is you take full responsibility. Enough people do not want to take full responsibility. They want somebody else to blame along the way. Yes, it was really not my idea. It was so-and-so's idea. And by the way, if it's not something that rhymes well with your heart, you're more likely to drop because you'll get tired. And more so when it comes to bigger causes, when it comes to bigger dreams, you can be sure you're going to get a lot of troubles on the way. You cannot climb the ladder with your hands in the pocket, they say. But as long as we are disciplined, last week we were talking about disciplined thinking. We are disciplined in our thinking, and so we also get disciplined in our focus. Discipline is the topic. If we will let our focus waver, we are here, there, then we are not going to be able to achieve anything worth talking about. The other thing that you've mentioned is doing extra things to supplement. Enough people do that, and enough others have done successfully, trying to keep themselves afloat as they build into their dreams. Yes, I remember reading from Kiyosaki when he was building his training organization. At some point, they had to go look for some odd jobs to do so that they keep afloat. They are able to put meals on the table as they build into their dream organization, the Rich Dad organization, which they managed to do. The problem is enough others, the moment we start doing these small things to keep meal or food on the table, that becomes our main focus. So today we were doing this, tomorrow we were doing that, because we are just trying to survive. And that means we have nothing bigger to follow, no big dream. And that is when people start talking about bora uhai. As long as you are able to eat and live, tomorrow will take care of itself. So we need to be having a bigger dream. Remember, the book is Live Your Dream. We need to be having a bigger dream, and we are committed to it. It doesn't matter what we do by the side to stay on course, to support us on course. The other thing I wanted to mention is it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. That's something I learned. It takes 20 years to become an overnight success. You've talked about people who maybe practice safari rally for 8 years. Some other people, even these guys who run, the athletes, they practice for so many years. Even people who win gold medal in the Olympics. Even people who become professional musicians or organists or something, they practice and practice and practice, whether they are boxers, the boxing champions or something. It will take us a long time to master our trade, to become experts. And remember, average is not going to make us any happier. If we are going to be experts in our fields, then it's going to take us quite a number of years. If we are going to master our business very well and have that competitive advantage, which is necessary for us to reap the fruits, then we are going to have to spend quite a number of years in what we're doing. And that is something we've got to appreciate. And therefore, without a disciplined focus, we are bound to become people who now measure on the minor. We start measuring on the side jobs, which people call side hustles. They become the main things. You are now doing 7, 8, whatever, because there is no main focus. So we need to have that particular disciplined focus in order to, one, take responsibility, two, realize our dreams, and it makes us become champions in our field. Yes. Thank you very much for that contribution.
Thank you very much, Pipi and the team. It's always good to start a week on the Live Your Dream note. It's a very energizing note. On the topic of focus, today I don't have of course, I would have a real life story, but today I want just to share something very short. I think it is going to be my shortest sharing. When we talk about focus, it reminds me of a quote I read from somewhere. I can't remember where because I read it many years ago. And this person said that obstacles, because of course, when you're talking about focus, there are those things we call obstacles. Obstacles are those frightful things we see when we lift our eyes off the goal. So when those you get your eyes off the goal, then you start seeing frightful things. Those are the ones we call obstacles. And then obstacles, in other words, we can also call them what we call them. These are the quote quote stumbling blocks. You know, those things that are making us not be able to reach there. But then somebody also said that the difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is how we walk on them. So the question is, those things that are preventing you from getting there, are they are they derailing you, or are you using them to generate more energy to be able to get there? And from what Paul Peter, I think, shared, you got a lot of stumbling blocks along the way, but then used them as stepping stones instead, to keep renewing your energy. So I think for us today, that's my sharing for the day. Thank you so much, PP.
Beautiful, beautiful, Anthony. That was wonderful. Obstacles come, I read, not to obstruct, but to aid you. Yes, they give you the impetus. Victory is always sweeter if you met enough obstacles. If you do not meet them and you can count, I also manage this. At one point, let me tell you guys, when I was young, I was experiencing lots of problems until I asked myself, must life be full of problems? And that also took me time trying to meditate on. I'm this kind of person who can pick an idea and ponder over it for ages. And I started thinking about, let's think of life without problems. Then I started imagining life without problems. Then I realized that is impossible. Yeah, that would be a very monotonous, boring life. Life is sweeter when we meet troubles and overcome them. That is when we see victory. That is when we get the energy. So troubles come not to trouble you, but to train you. Now, the other thing there is something there added. You see, when we get our eyes off our goal, which is the dream that we want to achieve, that we want to live, then we are going to start seeing them. We are going to start seeing them. And I usually love this example of the biblical example of Peter when he was called by Jesus to walk on water. He walked, actually. Peter managed to do it until he started focusing on the waves and the tides and not focusing on Jesus, where his destination was. And most times, when we stop focusing on the reason we started doing what we are doing, we are going to quit. And that reminds me a story that Kiyosaki says when he was calling his rich dad that he's quitting. He told him, "I'm quitting." And then the dad asked him, "You can always quit, so why now?" It took me a long time to understand what that meant, but I later understood it. You can always quit. There are always opportunities ahead of you. You can quit. So why have you chosen right now? Why not just move on until some other time later? You can always postpone quitting. So if we take, then he was told, remember the reason you started. Remember the reason you started. And I think this is also biblical. I think there is a place where Paul tells the believers, remember the reason, remember the way you were brought up, remember the reason you got here in the first place. So that is very important. Now then, you've talked about stumbling blocks and stepping stones, and that reminds me of a philosophy I love so much. The reason you don't want to do it is the reason you want to do it. Yes. If these stones are the ones that are going to block you, then they should be the ones to aid you to do it. And that attitude will always help us to be able to overcome. The reason we don't want to do it is the reason we want to do it. And that reminds me again, in first year, when physics was hard, yeah, it was literally hard. By the way, a professor, one of our lecturers from Russia, a Russian, told us, "Why did you choose physics? This is the hardest course on earth." And he believed Africans cannot do physics, apparently. But somebody told me, one of my relatives, when he called, told me, "Are there other people who've done it? Yeah, then you can do it." That gave me motivation. But then one other thing that kept me moving on, by the way, I have a long story with this physics thing. The reason you don't want to do it. I realized that whatever people tell me is hard, I cannot make it, I should not do. That is usually the one I want to do because I want to be different. So because it is hard, I want to do it. Because not many people do it, I want to do it. Yeah. So the reason you do not want to do it could be the reason you want to do it. So thank you. That's very beautiful sharing. You've ignited quite some beautiful thoughts there. Yes. Any other person with a thought? Hi, how are you?
Very well.
Yes.
Me, I'm on both sides. I think there was somebody who was just, when you were just talking about the athletes, and recently I was listening to this Manyala guy, and he said the way he trains, I think 8 to 9 hours a day. And so you can imagine, for somebody to be that good, it's not a walk in the park. Then I realized when I was doing my master's and at the defense level, there was a problem with the sampling size. So my supervisor was a senior professor, and he had an argument that I didn't have a problem with the sample size, yet the panel had an issue. They said the sample size was quite small. But my supervisor said, I'm a senior supervisor, I'm a senior lecturer. Who are those? And so in the midst of this, those guys did award me marks when they were supposed to. Yet I had completed everything. And do you know that thing just threw me off balance, kabisa? It took about 5 years. While I should have graduated in the year, actually 6 years. Well, I should have graduated in the year that I was doing it. So certain things, I think when we lose focus sometimes, maybe out of our own doing, and sometimes we tend to want to blame others, yet the responsibility is upon us, because after that back and forth, you go to the panel, they tell you you have to change, you go to the supervisor, the main supervisor, he tells you, no, there's nothing like that, tell them to talk to me. And so I ended up wasting a lot of time, which of course I regretted, because when an opportunity now comes and you feel like, I know this is not something that should have taken me this long, then you realize that now losing focus is very easy, and yet I'm the one who is responsible for it. So there are life lessons that we learn from our experiences, and that consistency, I think, is what is key in staying disciplined and focused. So there's a continued encouragement that whenever you find yourself going off course, you alone sometimes can decide to charter the path that you want to go, so that you're able to go back to line and just correct your mistakes and pick it up from where you're losing it. Otherwise, I'm very grateful for this day. Of course, I'm a little offline kidogo, but I'm happy to join.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that beautiful example. Let me tell you, that's why we are saying, remember the reason you started. The reason if you remember the reason you started, then you will keep going. You did not start it for the lecturer, for the supervisor, but because they were not very encouraging to you, you felt like, okay, nimewaachia hiyo.
Niingie kwa vita zao, which was not my war.
And by the end of the day, you realize that they were continuing to earn their salaries, to do their job.
Exactly.
You are the one who was off track. So
Yes.
if we remember the reason we started, we will always stay online and we will reach the finish line. You've given an example of the athlete, Omanyala or Imanyala. What is the exact name? Yeah. You see, I learned that, and just the other day I was telling, I think, my daughter that, you know, those people who play organ, they practice 20 hours a day. That is not possible. No, I learned that they practice 20 hours a day. And somebody will feel like you go practice 30 minutes and you feel that will earn you some success, some glory. If you see, going back to that, if you see somebody going to the podium and playing and people give standing ovation, it did not happen because he's talented. He's talented, yes, but over and above that talent, there was a lot of work involved. If you see Usain Bolt maybe winning in, some people start calculating how many millions per second, that he did 100 meters in 11 seconds. So how many millions per second? No, that is the wrong way to look at it. A lot of us see the final result and say how lucky we are. It's never like that. It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of practice. I was giving that example again a couple of days ago, I think, to the same student I was talking to, that you see, for the next Olympic, the moment people come out of Olympic, they are practicing for the next Olympic. And you'll realize that that next Olympic, they will not win the gold medal or whichever the medal they were looking for. They will still keep practicing. So they are talking about 4 years ahead. They are practicing every day for so many hours. But some of us do not even want to plan for 1 year. And that's why we watch them on TV screens and nobody is watching us. Because they are putting in determination, they are putting in the effort, they are putting in whatever it takes to be able to achieve that particular dream. It is that focus. Otherwise, along the way, you are going to get a lot of distractions. You are going to get something that is less than the best. But because you are not firm into your goal, you will settle for that, and you'll say, well, even this is good enough. If you are going for gold, you get some silver, you say, well, even this is good enough. Not very many people get silver. No. Sometimes we've got to realize that even the people who achieved it, they were able to keep that clear line of focus, clear sight into the goal. You lose that focus, you start focusing on other things, you get distracted. And that becomes our biggest nightmare. Remember, there are always good things around, but the best, the one that will give you full fulfillment, is the one that you set out to go for. And that you will be able to celebrate. Great. I think we are coming to an end. We have just 3 minutes left. Somebody else with one more thing to say?